and writer of the Bible book bearing his name. Any 1. 1, 2, 11. 2. 1. 5. 14, 16. During the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, in the month Chislev November-December, Nehemiah, while in Shushan the castle, received visitors, his brother Hanani and other men from Judah. Upon his inquiry, they told him about the bad plight of the Jews and that the wall and gates of Jerusalem were still in ruins. Nehemiah was moved to tears. For days thereafter he mourned, continually fasting and praying. He confessed Israel's sin and, on the basis of God's words to Moses to 30. 1-4, petitioned Jehovah to make him an object of pity before King Artaxerxes so that his plan to rebuild Jerusalem's wall might be successful. Any 1. Later, in the month of Nisan March-April, Nehemiah's prayers were answered. The king noticed that Nehemiah's face was gloomy and asked why. Nehemiah then informed him about the sorry state of affairs in Jerusalem. When asked what he was seeking to secure, Nehemiah, immediately praying to God, requested permission from the king to return and rebuild Jerusalem. The request was granted. Additionally, Nehemiah received letters from the king, entitling him to freedom of passage through the areas under the jurisdiction of Governors W of the Euphrates River and also granting timber supplies for the project. With chiefs of the military force and horsemen, he departed for Jerusalem. Any 2. 1-9. Jerusalem's wall rebuilt. After being in Jerusalem for 3 days, Nehemiah, unknown to anyone except a few men who were with him, made a nighttime inspection of the city. While the rest were on foot, Nehemiah rode an animal, probably a horse or an ass. The ruins became so extensive as to obstruct passage, but Nehemiah was able to finish his inspection. Any 2. 11-16. Following the completion of his survey, Nehemiah revealed his plan to the Jews, drawing to their attention Jehovah's hand in the matter. Encouraged thereby, they responded, "Let us get up, and we must build." Despite the derisive words of Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian, repair work began on about the 4th of July-August. Any 2. 17-20. Compare NE 6. 15. As the work progressed, Sanballat and Tobiah continued to deride and mock the efforts of the Jews to repair the wall of Jerusalem. Nehemiah made this a subject of prayer, and the people continued to have a heart for working. When the wall reached half its height, Sanballat, Tobiah, and neighboring peoples intensified their opposition to the point of conspiring to fight against Jerusalem. Nehemiah repeatedly received reports to that effect from Jews living near the city. Again Nehemiah manifested prayerful reliance on Jehovah. To meet the tense situation, he armed the workmen, arranged for others to stand guard, and outlined an alarm system. Nehemiah did not even take off his clothes at night, evidently to be ready to fight in the event of an alarm signal from the watch. NE 4. Urgent as the situation was, Nehemiah was not too busy to give due consideration to the outcry of the Jews. Hearing their complaints that they were being oppressed by having to pay interest, he censured the nobles and deputy rulers, arranged a great assembly, and, after exposing this evil, instructed that the situation be rectified. NE 5. 1-13. It was after this that the enemies made attempts to stop the rebuilding work. 4 times they tried to lure Nehemiah away from his project, but he informed them that he was unable to take time off Otex to execute Miritra Longo. Nehemiah, Book of 487 Shin Procure thereby could have served as a basis for taking steps to increase the population of Jerusalem. Apparently while Nehemiah was giving consideration to this genealogical enrollment, he found the record of those who had returned from Babylonian exile with Zerubbabel. NE 7. 4-7. Law observance restored. It was probably at Nehemiah's direction that an assembly was held in the public square near the Watergate. Although Ezra the priest evidently took the lead in giving instruction in the law, Nehemiah also shared therein. NE 8. 1-12. Next, the 8-day festival of booths was held. 2 days later the Israelites convened again. During this assembly a general confession of Israel's sin was made. Thereafter a written confession contract was drawn up. This confession contract or trustworthy arrangement was attested by the princes, Levites, and priests. Nehemiah, the Shahada governor, was the first to test it by seal. NE 8. 13. 10. When all the people agreed to refrain from intermarriage with foreigners, to observe the Sabbaths, and to support the temple service. Next, 1 person out of every 10 was selected by lot to dwell permanently in Jerusalem. NE 10. 28. 11. 1. It was after this that the wall of Jerusalem was inaugurated. For the occasion Nehemiah appointed 2 large thanksgiving choirs and processions to make a tour of the wall in opposite directions. It was done, and all met at the temple to offer sacrifices. Additionally, men were appointed to be in charge of the contributions for the priests and Levites. NE 12. 27-47. About 12 years later, in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, Nehemiah left Jerusalem. Upon his return, he found deplorable conditions among the Jews. Eliashib the high priest had made a dining hall in the courtyard of the temple for the use of Tobiah, the very man who earlier had viciously opposed the work of Nehemiah. Immediately Nehemiah took action. He threw all of Tobiah's furniture outside the dining hall and instructed that the dining hall be cleansed. Additionally, Nehemiah took measures to ensure the contributions for the Levites and enforced strict Sabbath observance. He also administered discipline against those who had taken foreign wives, whose sons by these women were not even able to speak the Jewish tongue. And I began to find fault with them and called down evil upon them and strike some men of them and pull out their hair and make them swear by God. You should not give your daughters to their sons, and you should not accept any of their daughters for your sons or yourselves. Nehemiah's finding fault with these men doubtless was his reproving and rebuking them by means of God's law, exposing their wrong action. These men were bringing the restored nation into disfavor with God, after God had kindly repatriated them from Babylon to restore true worship at Jerusalem. Nehemiah called down evil upon them, meaning that he recited the judgments of God's law against such violators. He struck them, probably not personally, but ordered them flogged as in official judicial action. He pulled out a portion of their hair. It was a symbol of moral indignation and ignominy before the people. Compare as 9. 3. Nehemiah then chased away the grandson of high priest Eliashib, who had become a son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite. NE 13. 1-28. Nehemiah, an outstanding example. Nehemiah stands out as a sterling example of faithfulness and devotion. He was unselfish, leaving behind a prominent position as cupbearer in the courtyard of Artaxerxes to undertake the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls. As there were many enemies, Nehemiah willingly exposed himself to danger in behalf of his people and true worship. Not only did he direct the work of repairing the wall of Jerusalem, but he also had an active, personal share in the task. He wasted no time, was courageous and fearless, relied fully on Jehovah, and was otextoi acutely retra longo. Nehemiah, Book of 488 in this case is not reckoned as starting in Nisan March-April, for Chislev of the 20th year could not then precede Nisan mentioned at NE 2. 1 of the same 20th year. So it may be that Nehemiah used his own count of time, reckoning the lunar year as beginning with Tishri September-October, which month Jews today recognize as the beginning of their civil year. Another possibility is that the reign of the king was reckoned from the actual date that the monarch ascended the throne. This could be so even though the Babylonian scribes continue to reckon the years of the Persian king's reign on their customary basis of Nisan to Nisan count, as their cuneiform tablets show they did. Reliable historical evidence in the fulfillment of Bible prophecy point to 455 BCE as the year in which Nisan of the 20th year of Artaxerxes' reign fell. See Persia, Persians the reigns of Xerxes and of Artaxerxes. Accordingly, the Chislev preceding Nisan of that 20th year would fall in 456 BCE and the 32nd year of Artaxerxes' reign, the last date mentioned in Nehemiah 13. 6 would include part of 443 BCE. Therefore, the book of Nehemiah covers a period from Chislev of 456 BCE until sometime after 443 BCE. It was in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes' reign that Nehemiah left Jerusalem. Upon his return, he found that the Jews were not supporting the priests and Levites, the Sabbath law was being violated, many had married foreign women, and the offspring of the mixed marriages did not even know how to speak the language of the Jews. NE 13. 10-27 For conditions to have deteriorated to this point indicates that Nehemiah's absence entailed a considerable period. But there is no way to events surrounding the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem and the subsequent clearing out of wrong practices from among the Jews covers a period that begins more than 80 years after the Jews returned from exile in Babylon. Jerusalem's walls are rebuilt in the face of opposition in Shushan. Nehemiah learns about the ruined state of Jerusalem's wall. He prays for Jehovah's support, then asks the Persian monarch Artaxerxes for permission to go and rebuild the city and its wall. Artaxerxes consents. 1. 2. 9 Arriving in Jerusalem, Nehemiah inspects the ruined walls by night. Afterward he reveals to the Jews his purpose to rebuild. 2. 11-18 Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. Foreigners all oppose the rebuilding. First they try ridicule, then they conspire to fight against Jerusalem. Nehemiah arms the workers, and they continue building. 2. 19. 4. 23 Plots against Nehemiah himself fail, and the wall is completed in 52 days. 6. 1-19 The wall is inaugurated. At the ceremony 2 thanksgiving choirs and processions march in opposite directions on top of the wall and meet at the temple. There is great rejoicing. 12. 27-43 The affairs of Jerusalem are put in order after the wall is completed. Nehemiah secures Jerusalem with gates and assigns duties to gatekeepers, singers, and Levites. He appoints Hanani and Hananiah to be in charge of the city. 7. 1-3 Nehemiah sets out to make a genealogical record of the people. He finds the book of genealogical enrollment of those returning from Babylon with Zerubbabel. Priests that cannot establish their genealogy abide until the priest with Urim and Thummim stands up. 7. 5-73 Jerusalem is underpopulated, so 1 out of every 10 of the people is designated by lot to reside in the city. 7. 4. 11. 1. 2 Efforts are made to improve the spiritual condition of the Jews. Wealthy Jews agree to make restoration to their poor brothers, whom they have wrongly charged interest on loans. 5. 1-13 At a public assembly, Ezra reads the law and certain Levites share in explaining it. The people weep but are encouraged to rejoice because the day is holy. They rejoice, too, because they understand Dotextoi acute miritra longo. Neighbor 489 determined just how long after 443 BCE Nehemiah completed the book bearing his name. Agreement with other Bible books. The book of Nehemiah exalts Jehovah God. It reveals him to be the creator. Ne 9. 6. Compare GE 1. 1. PS 146. 6. Re 4. 11. A God who answers the sincere prayers of his servants. Ne 1. 11. 2. 8. 4. 4, 5, 15, 16. 6. 16. Compare PS 86. 6, 7, and the defender of his people. Ne 4. 14, 20. Compare X 14. 14, 25. He is a God of acts of forgiveness, gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness. Ne 9. 17. Compare New 14. 18. The God of the heavens, the God great and fear-inspiring, keeping the covenant and loving kindness toward those loving him and keeping his commandments. Ne 1. 5. Compare to 7. 9, 10, 21. Numerous allusions to the law are found in the book of Nehemiah. These involve the calamities to result from disobedience and the blessings to come from repentance. 26. 33. 30. 4. Ne 1. 7-9, loans. 25. 35-38. 15. 7-11. Ne 5. 2-11, marriage alliances with foreigners. 7. 3. Ne 10. 30, Sabbaths, the release from debt. 6-20. 8. 25. 4. 15. 1, 2. Ne 10. 31, the altar fire. 6. 13. Ne 10. 34, the Festival of Booths to 31. 10-13. NE 8. 14-18, and the entry of Moabites and Ammonites into the congregation of Israel to 23. 3-6. NE 13. 1-3, as well as tithes, first fruits, and contributions. X 30. 16. New 18. 12-30. NE 10. 32-39. There is also historical information in this book that is found elsewhere in the Hebrew Scriptures. NE 9. 7-35. 13. 26. Compare NE 13. 17, 18 with J 17. 21-27. And contemporary history in the account illustrates other biblical passages. Psalms 123 and 129 find a historical parallel in what was experienced by Nehemiah and the other Jews in connection with their rebuilding of the wall of Jerusalem. NE 4. 1-5, 9. 6. 1-14 Jehovah's causing Artaxerxes to do his will by granting Nehemiah's request to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem historically illustrates Proverbs 21. 1. A king's heart is as streams of water in the hand of Jehovah. Everywhere that he delights to, he turns it. NE 2. 4-8. Both the Book of Ezra 2. 1-67 and the Book of Nehemiah 7. 6-69 list the number of exiles from various families or houses who returned from Babylonian exile with Zerubbabel. The accounts harmonize in giving 42,360 as the total number of Israelites who returned, apart from slaves and singers. As 2. 64. NE 7. 66 However, there are differences in the numbers given for each family or house, and the individual figures in both listings yield a total of far less than 42,360. Many scholars would attribute these variations to scribal errors. While this aspect cannot be completely ignored, there are other possible explanations for the differences. It may be that Ezra and Nehemiah base their listings on different sources. For example, Ezra could have used a document listing those who enrolled to return to their homeland, whereas Nehemiah might have copied from a record listing those who actually did return. Since there were priests who were unable to establish their genealogy as 2. 61-63. NE 7. 63-65, it is not unreasonable to conclude that many of the other Israelites face the same problem. Consequently, the 42,360 could be the combined total of the number from each family plus many others who were unable to establish their ancestry. Later, however, some may have been able to establish their correct genealogy. This could explain how a fluctuation in numbers might still give the same total. Nehiloth Nehi Middle.Loth. A transliteration of Niki Middle.Loth, a Hebrew term of uncertain derivation and meaning, occurring only in the superscription of Psalm 5. Nehiloth appears to be a musical expression, and many believe that it refers to a wind instrument, linking it with a Hebrew root related to char middle.lil flute. However, the phrase for Nehiloth may designate a melody. The Greek Septuagint and the O Textoi Acute Muritra Longo neighbor 490 other associated Hebrew terms that are in some contexts rendered neighbor very slightly in connotation and give us a broader view of the relationships expressed in the Hebrew Scriptures. Rea means fellow, companion, friend and can apply to closeness of relationship, but it generally means one's fellow man or fellow countryman, whether he is a close associate, lives nearby or not. In most of its uses in the Scriptures it applies to a fellow member of the Commonwealth of Israel or to one residing in Israel. X 20. 16. 22. 11. D 4. 42. PR 11. 9 A middle.myth means fellow or associate and is used often in the sense of one with whom a person has some dealings. The 6. 2. 19. 15, 17. 25. 14, 15 Middle.rove, meaning near, at hand, related to, has reference to place, time, or persons. It can imply more intimate relationship than neighbor and is at times rendered intimate or close acquaintance. X 32. 27. Jos 9. 16. PS 15. 3. 38. 11. No one English word can express fully all these shades of meaning. Similarly, in the Greek scriptures there are 3 words with slightly different flavor that are usually translated neighbor. Gaetun, one living in the same land. Lu 14. 12. Jo 9. 8. Pe middle. Middle. Kos, an adjective meaning dwelling around, used as a noun plural at Luke 1. 58. Bul middle. Sion, meaning near, used with the article hoda, literally, the one near. Row 13. 10. F4. 25 of these Greek words, Vine's Expository Dictionary of Old and New Testament Words says. These words have a wider range of meaning than that of the Eng. Word neighbor. There were no farmhouses scattered over the agricultural areas of Palestine. The populations, gathered in villages, went to and fro to their toil. Hence domestic life was touched at every point by a wide circle of neighborhood. The terms for neighbor were therefore of a very comprehensive scope. This may be seen from the chief characteristics of the privileges and duties of neighborhood as set forth in Scripture, or its helpfulness, for example. Luke 10. 36. Be its intimacy, for example Luke 15. 6, 9. Heb. 8. 11. See its sincerity and sanctity, for example. Rom. 13. 10. 15. 2. F. 4. 25. Jas. 4. 12. 1981, Volume 3, p. 107. Bad neighbors. However, some living nearby might be evil neighbors, as were the neighbor nations around Israel. When Jerusalem's temple was destroyed by Babylonian hands in 607 BCE, these nations, such as Edom, rejoiced, even surrendering fugitive Jews to their enemies. PS 137. 7. Ob 8-14. Mic 4. 11. The psalmist was moved to write. We have become a reproach to our neighbors, a plural form of Shamiduldukin, a derision and a jeering to those round about us. He prayed. Repay to our neighbors, a plural form of shaken 7 times into their bosom their reproach with which they have reproached you. Because Jehovah dwelt among Israel, he spoke of the nations that opposed his people as all my bad neighbors, who were touching the hereditary possession that I caused my people, even Israel, to possess. PS 79. 4, 12. J 12. 14. Compare PS 68. 16. Love towards neighbor commanded. The Bible, throughout, instructs one to exercise love, kindness, generosity, and helpfulness toward one's neighbor, whether he be merely a dweller nearby, an associate, a companion, an intimate acquaintance, or a friend. The law commanded. With justice you should judge your associate. Form of a middle. Myth. You must not hate your brother in your heart. You should by all means reprove your associate, that you may not bear sin along with him. And you must love your fellow. Form of Raya as yourself. The 19. 15-18. In the Greek Septuagint the word Raya is here translated by the Greek expression hopel middle. Sion. David commends the man who is not slandered with his tongue. To his companion. Form of Raya, he has done nothing